Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for LPM's Legal IT Landscapes webcast on productivity in a remote working world. Thank you for joining us this morning, and a big thank you to our partner NetDocuments for making this happen with us. I'm joined by Guy Phillips, who's responsible for international business at NetDocuments, and our two guest speakers, John Turner, the Chief Operating Officer at Ellisons Solicitors, and Karen Edwards, Director and Head of Business Support at Hedges Law. This is being recorded and will be circulated after the events should you want to watch back or share with your colleagues. And we do have a chance for a Q&A at the end, so do feel free to pop your questions in either the chat or in the Q&A section, and I will get to those in the end. I would encourage you to do that at any point during our segments when you think of them, because we have three key areas of discussion today around productivity. So we're going to start with collaboration, then we'll move on to risk and security, and then we'll round it off with change management. So just to kick us off, Guy, I don't know if you want to do a quick intro and tell us what you're seeing in this space.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Kayli. So yeah, from a NetDocuments perspective, and I'm not too sure how many of the audience are familiar with NetDocuments, we're a global provider of document management systems to professional services firms, primarily law firms, but also accounting firms and financial services firms. Anybody really who has a need to manage people time and the documents related to that. And over the last 12 months, we've really seen a huge increase in demand for NetDocuments, primarily because it is a true cloud platform, meaning that you can use it wherever you are. So as the old Martini advert used to say, it's anytime, any place, anywhere. And with all the security that's pertinent to that. So I think one of the, there are a few things that we've seen over the last 12 months. Certainly high demand for cloud-based applications because firms are looking for something that's very, very easy to deploy without being an overhead on their IT infrastructure or their IT departments within the firms, and also being able to manage remote working, which has become so prevalent now with firms. And so the collaboration tools and those aspects of that, which we'll explore a little bit as we go through this presentation discussion today, and talking about the productivity gains as well. So thanks very much, Kayli, and I'm sure that we'll have an exciting event for people to listen into and ask questions at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Guy. Yeah, so for the first section around collaboration, obviously there's a lot that we've learned over the last 12 months, more than a year now, around how remote working has worked for firms, especially for the legal sector. Lots of change needed to happen. So my first question for you guys is, how are you able to leverage those digital tools? And have you found an increase in team efficiency and productivity? What are those learnings over the last few months? And how will you do that going forward? John, why don't we start with you?
So in the last year, it'd be no surprise that we've had almost all of our workforce working from home. They've been leveraging off a number of tools to be able to work from home. First being Teams. We implemented Teams, funnily enough, just before the pandemic, which was more luck, I have to say, than judgment. And then during the pandemic, we implemented NetDocuments document management system. So that's that's enabled our teams to, those two tools have enabled our teams to not only collaborate internally, having meetings like this, but meeting with clients like this, but also collaborating with clients in terms of documents with those clients and actually having version control. These are things that we didn't have before, and that's one of the reasons that we actually implemented NetDocs during the pandemic, was that last piece of jigsaw in our remote working puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Karen? What have you been doing over the last year in terms of digital tools?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like John, very similar things. And we migrated to a new practice management system as well, right at the beginning of lockdown last year. And the move to the cloud, the pure cloud world that we now use, has really helped us in terms of the collaboration and digital tools that we now have available. So lots of cloud-based apps. We use the Google Workspace infrastructure. So there's a lot of collaboration. I mean, Google is just, it's renowned for collaboration. So everything that it's built on is collaborative. So it's really easy for us to be able to leverage those tools straight away. And again, collaborating on documents, instant chat messaging, lots of meetings by video call, and as well as the Google infrastructure, the practice management system that we also implemented meant that we could also use the automation tools that has with its workflow, all its visibility benefits that it has. So there was a lot of decisions we made pre-pandemic, actually, and I think we're coming on to talk about that in a little bit longer. But there's, the choices that we made prior to that really kind of set us in good stead for making that remote world work with the tech that we had at the time.
Yeah, just a little bit more on that cloud move. What were some of the challenges? And I guess we've been talking about the benefits of cloud for years and years now, and in legal IT landscapes, we've seen a general trend for more SME firms adopting it. Do you think this was the final push for your firm, Karen? And kind of what was that like trying to get it up and running?
Yeah, I mean, I think the levers, we originally made the decision before COVID hit, actually. So end of 2019, beginning of January 2020. So we were just starting to hear murmurings of COVID, but it wasn't, the full pandemic that we've experienced. And we had decided at that stage to move away from what we currently had. And we were sort of a semi-hybrid at the time. We had Microsoft Azure, we had hosted servers, so virtual terminals. That was our infrastructure, but for us it just didn't work. We found it very unreliable, expensive, clunky, and quite inflexible. We weren't really able to kind of achieve what we wanted to achieve as a business in terms of our strategy going forward with that sort of environment. And the practice management system we had as well was very, very similar, expensive and clunky. And there was a lot of frustration, a lot of downtime. Things just didn't quite work very well. So we said, look, we want to become a more flexible, agile firm. We want to kind of become more 21st century. We're going to move to pure cloud. So we've ditched the servers. We've got no on-site servers, no on-premise infrastructure at all. We don't have any hosted servers. So we just moved completely to cloud apps. We use the Google workspace infrastructure. We've moved away from Microsoft. And that's just enabled us to plug in lots of different web apps, lots of different SaaS applications, which means it's just really easy to add on things that will make our jobs easier, our client service better, our people happier. And I think at the time we were a little bit hesitant because it was lockdown. We were due to go live on the 1st of April 2020, and we're like, oh, can we do this remotely? We've never done anything like that before, and it was, I think, new to everybody. It was a bit like, oh, shall we delay, shall we go ahead? But we decided just to bite the bullet and do it. And actually it was so easy because of the tech that we had. It was just all browser based. All you needed was a browser and an internet connection. Everybody could just log in with ease. We did the training remotely, we did the migration remotely, and it worked, and we started to see the benefits almost immediately. So I think the timing helped because the pandemic kind of just reinforced the need to do it. We'd started looking at it before that because it suited the way that our business wanted to go. But the pandemic really helped in terms of actually just forcing us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, for your firm, you guys have been using the cloud for a little bit longer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We started our digital transformation or digital journey, I think, in 2017. That was back at a time when Ellisons was fairly medieval, I have to say, in terms of its IT. And our last part of that, if you like, digital journey was the implementation of the document management system. So we had remote working, but exactly the same as Karen, except we chose the Microsoft Azure route. It's just very important to get that stack right. It's very important to think about security, and it's very important to think about the impact on the colleagues in the firm in terms of our new hybrid way of working. One of the things that we've just implemented literally last week is our policy from working from home. So we've put in a working from home policy for all of our colleagues so that they can work from home 3 days a week, 2 days a week in the office, but flexibility in terms of doing that over a 2-week period. Of course, we've had to navigate. There are people who can't not work in the office. There are certain roles, and we've left it down to heads of departments to manage that locally. That's a policy that will run until the end of December, because I don't think we know where we're all going to be at the end of the year, and then we review the policy. But yeah, the cloud, like Karen, we don't have any servers, and we have that ultimate flexibility, elasticity about whether we want to use more storage or more computing power, all the things that the cloud brings you, but more importantly, just remote working. And we used to be a firm of server huggers, and now the servers have all gone, so we can't hug them anymore.
Great. Guy, I just want to go to you as well. As one of your areas of expertise is cloud. Have you found that clients have finally understanding the misconceptions around what the move to cloud might feel like, and kind of finally getting those conversations going for them?
Yeah, I think there'd been a fairly rapid sort of move towards cloud applications anyway over the last few years, and the last 12 months have really massively accelerated that process. And so, as Karen was saying earlier and John alluded to, that firms are now able to very easily implement new applications because there isn't the overhead on the internal IT department to deliver a server platform or an environment to run it on. It literally can be switched on remotely and made accessible to the firm, and therefore the firm can focus on delivering legal services or financial services or the accounting services that they do without having to worry about all of that back office infrastructure. And at the same time, they can focus on the delivery of these new applications. So, John mentioned it and Karen mentioned it as well about that ability to implement remotely as well. Both the firms have managed successfully to implement the new applications with remote training, remote consulting services, and remote configurations provided by their suppliers, relevant suppliers. And that's the same for all of the clients who've been going live on NetDocuments over the last 12 months. They've all managed to do that remotely. So I think there's been a gradual migration towards cloud, but this has been a huge accelerating process over the last 12 months. And firms have really benefited from that through productivity, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. So yeah, definitely seeing a huge increase in the adoption of cloud, and perhaps the negativity that was perceived 3 or 4 or maybe 5 years ago around security has pretty much vanished now, with large organizations, big financial institutions moving on to the cloud on NetDocuments, like Deutsche Bank and the like. So that removes that concern that people previously had a few years ago. Other people have been there and done all the due diligence, and others can follow in the footsteps of the sort of pathfinder firms. So yeah, moving forward very well.
Yeah, I know I said we get to the questions at the end, but Richard from the audience has asked a really interesting question that I'd like to pose, which is how much time is spent managing cloud infrastructure compared to when you had them on-prem or in hosted servers? John, Karen, I don't know if you have any specific stats around that.
I certainly can't give you any stats, but what I can give you is an outcome. It's not a very pleasant outcome, but we were able to reduce our IT team by a person when we moved from basically a server infrastructure to the cloud. We do leverage off a partner technology company to give us some management around the statistics of the capacity that we're using within the cloud. But if I look at the return on investment, and if I look at the outcome, we are more efficient. And what we've gained for the business ultimately is flexibility. So if you go back to the day of having an infrastructure that's on site, with servers, if we wanted to run a new application, often the IT team would be saying, yeah, that's absolutely fine, but we're going to have to buy a new server for that, John. We're going to need to invest in X, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, of course, that was all doable. But now it's a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward. We're running a couple of projects at the moment. We've just spun up a server in the cloud, and we're running a couple of proof of concepts. Again, in the past, we'd either have to have a spare server or I'd have to probably go and get it, because you run at that optimum infrastructure capacity.
Yeah. How about you, Karen? You mentioned you saw the immediate benefit from cloud movement. Do you have any stats around what time is spent?
Yeah, I think we in terms of our bottom line, I think that the switch, very much like John, it had an immediate impact in terms of our operational costs around particularly IT and development and maintenance and things like that. And we've never had a huge IT team, but now we have an outsourced Google partner who help us to manage the Google security and the infrastructure around the Google workspace. And that's it. You know, we don't, because it's just a browser. That's all you need. So as long as your internet connection's working with your Wi-Fi, you know, everything else is just based around web-based apps, and all the security is built around those products already. So it's stripped our IT budget down massively, and you know, it's saved us tens of thousands of pounds. You know, that's sort of the level it can achieve. And again, it depends on what your current infrastructure and your sort of headcount is anyway, and the needs. And I think it also depends on, you know, the type of work that you offer clients as well. There's lots of different needs, isn't there, for different areas in terms of IT. But you know, for us, moving to the complete cloud has just been a game changer, just in terms of efficiency, productivity, and ultimately, you know, our bottom line improvement.
Yeah. Just to pull up one more question for this section, Karen, you mentioned how easy you've been able to integrate different systems or you know, add on different functionalities onto your new PMS and using Google. What are some of those tools? What have you been able to integrate, and how has the integration been?
Yeah, so we have been able to, we are integrating, we're creating an API development between our Google workspace and our practice management system, which is great, which means, again, we can have a pure sort of Google infrastructure cloud-based. We are having to still use a little bit of Microsoft Word, where a lot of the templates and management of documents is still very much Microsoft based, but we're creating our own Google API to allow us to use the Google collaboration tools instead. And we're also looking at a new web-based telephony system, which again connects into our practice management system. So it will time record for you that call, and it will record the call. It will create a file note, and it will just save it straight into your system. And it's all built around a browser. You know, it's easy. You know, the system that we use has an open API, so you can kind of, as long as you've got that, you can kind of just plug in most things really. And it's just a case of, you know, what do you want to achieve? What is it you want to plug in? You know, what do what do your clients want? What's the outcomes you're as a business you want to achieve? And you know, the world's your oyster, really. You can kind of choose what's out there and what's going to best suit how you want to work and how your clients want to receive their service.
Yeah. How about for your firm, John? I know you have the big DMS integration that you've just rolled out, but also anything else on the horizon or that you guys are currently working to integrate?
Well, we've got integrated telephony via the Mitel system. Our practice management solution integrates very nicely with NetDocuments, so that's all linked together. That our next, if you like, couple of projects around AI, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. So one of the benefits of building a stack that is industry best practice, these two tools that we're running a proof of concept on at the moment, they've literally just slid into our infrastructure, and there's been no concerns about, you know, what we're using, et cetera, et cetera. So we're evaluating those at the moment. Early days says it's going to save an awful lot of lawyer time if we can get this right, and it's actually working with the company to get it configured correctly. But it's looking really positive.
Yeah. And Guy, I just want to pose that question to you around how can firms, what are some of the challenges that firms come across when they are integrating, and what are your tips as a supplier in the space?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as suppliers to the professional services sectors, legal sector specifically has a number of best of breed solutions that law firms typically use, and so there'll be a number of different practice management systems, for example, that are aimed at different areas of the market. So larger firms will be using some of the bigger products out there, smaller firms, other products. And so the suppliers need to have, as Karen alluded to earlier on, that open API, which is the ability to connect the applications together so that you can really get the best of breed solutions talking to one another and interfacing and integrating through to one another. So we typically see every implementation will use our API to link through to the practice management system and to other systems that they're using, which will be a different mix and combination for pretty much every firm that we engage with. So having that open API and the ability to integrate, and also having a number of products that have already been integrated. So we have an app store that lists out the applications and the partners that have already integrated their solutions to NetDocuments. And that just makes life so much easier when you're going out looking for a document management system, particularly just look at what those products are already integrated to, and that will save you a lot of heartburn later on trying to integrate those products if there are already ISVs out there that have integrated the products, or the API is so open that that makes it a very easy process to conduct.
Yeah, I think this moves nicely into our next segment, which is around how to avoid security risks from fragmented data. Obviously, best of breed is a really good solution, and if you connect everything through APIs, you can, you can have a pretty good oversight off the risks and securities of your overall tech stack. So the question is, I'm wondering what your current challenges are. We have seen an increased risk landscape through our legal IT landscapes research for this year. And obviously there's a lot of new compliance and regulation on the market right now. So Karen, I just want to know, what are you guys doing around making sure that your firm is risk management is as best as it could be right now?
Yeah, so it's around data and people, isn't it? I think those are the two key areas. And in terms of our data, obviously the Google security network is one of the best in the world, and it's ISO accredited. It's built around the zero trust model. So it's a very secure system, and we use for key people within our teams, like certain admins and finance teams, we give them Titan chip keys as well, which gives them another endpoint verification to be able to keep their device secure as well, so that we have no phishing risks at all, which is great. But in terms of keeping data in one place, having that single source of truth, again, having a practice management system that's accessible, that's consistent, that everybody uses in the same way, and sort of enforcing that policy. And again, it's all around managed browsers, secure applications that you're using, two-factor authentication across all of our apps that we use, and making sure that we make use of certain tech abilities within our systems, like client portals, to securely send messages to and share documents with councils, with the other side, with the court, the clients. We can send lots of documents that way, so it's all kept in one space the client can easily access, and rather than sending lots of things over the email waves and people having to search for things. So the biggest challenge is people, human error. You can do a lot of the work around security, and because we're browser based, we don't have to have all the usual things that you would need on an on-premise server, and all the traditional security programs and things that you would have to have. But it's around the people and the human error thing, and education and training constantly. But I think with the Google, because of the security around the Google browser and the way that it's managed, the secure policies, the device policies that we've got in place, just means that our risk of phishing and attacks is almost non-existent, which is great.
How about for your firm, John? What are you guys doing around increased risk?
Well, I think it goes without saying that client data protection and security are first and foremost. We selected NetDocuments because we believed it was the most secure product out there. So that's one of the reasons we went for that. Every year we look at cybersecurity and try and move it forward. But as Karen was saying, there's one thing is the data, and the second thing is the human error. One of the things that we're actually concentrating on at the moment is the human error part. So we have a tool at the moment called Safe Send, which asks you to, when you're sending information out of the organization or even internally, are you sending it to the right people, and should you be sending this attachment? But we found we've had that in place for probably 18 months now. People are getting click happy, so we are now moving to a new tool which will hopefully be deployed. We're still in May, so next month, which uses machine learning. It monitors what you do and who you send things to, and it only intervenes if it sees if it sees you're going to make an error. So that's our next kind of step forward. Security is always up there, and we always invest. So touch wood, we've not had any issues yet, and if we keep investing and keep vigilant, I hope we won't.
Yeah. That just reminded me, Karen, I think you said you use client portals, is that right?
Yeah, so with our practice management system, we've got the ability to open up a portal, so that, and not just a client portal, actually, it could be anyone that you need to send and share documents with sensitive data in, and as many as you need to, and it exists for the lifetime of that matter. So as soon as that matter finishes and closes, the portal access is terminated. So it just means that the person on the other side can access it when they need to, but then they can, if it's their, it's their data, it's their documentation, they can then save it in a secure place for them. But it means, we've, particularly in the remote world in the last 12 months, we've used it very much for creating online bundles for courts. We do a lot of litigation work. So we've been able to use bundle docs, which is another thing that integrates with our practice management system. And we create online bundles, and so we can then share the bundles through the portals, because again, it's not size limited. It just means we're saving on all the paper and all the printing and the people time of putting all of that stuff together. And we can't send big documents like that over emails. Usually you have a limit, don't you, on the size that you can send. So having that flexibility with the client portal is great.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you see a general trend to moving away from email for document exchange and collaboration?
I think so. I think for security particularly, I think, we know how, sort of the Google infrastructure side, generally email communication isn't great, for security reasons. And there's always that human risk of sending it to the wrong person. So what John was saying earlier was great, being able to kind of have that prompt almost before it's going, just to kind of double check that you're sending it to the right person. There's a lot of personal data out there that we share. So the client portal is because it's all around the matter, the contact, the data, it's very good at kind of making sure that we are just sharing it with the right people. And again, you can have full control over what you're sharing. You can remove stuff, you can share, so it gives you that control as well. So and I think there's a big shift in the tech world, actually, for a lot of systems to be using more portals of that nature as opposed to emails. And what we use and the culture we have is trying to shift away from emails as much as we can to more, collaborative, sharing of documents in a more sort of 21st century way, really.
Yeah. How about for your firm, John? Are you guys looking at client portals alongside some of the new AI?
Yeah, we use the NetDocument portal for the collaboration with. It's generally speaking, that's for B2B, but we still have a lot of of clients and certainly clients of a certain age who wouldn't know a portal if it smacked them in the face, and they are still, they still want the face-to-face contact and appointments in many cases. So although technology is great for the youngsters coming through, everybody wants to do everything on their own iPhone or on their Android device, but we are still dealing with dinosaurs like me that perhaps want face-to-face, perhaps want an appointment, or at a real push, a Teams meeting. And therefore we still end up with wet signatures, etc. Another project we're running this year is digital client onboarding, and that is not for everyone. That cannot be a one size fits all. It can only be for the people that want it. So generally speaking, we have to try and have all the channels into Ellisons that people want to use, be that getting a conveyancing quote at the weekend online, or picking up the phone and talking to someone, and everything in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Guy, what are your thoughts around specifically the risk and security aspect? There's a lot that both John and Karen have pointed out in terms of the tech that they're using and kind of what they've learned. What are you seeing in terms of your clients and in the tech space?
Well, I think John was probably looking at me when he was talking about the elderly folk that he looks after. I'm looking forward to John bringing my Meals on Wheels round later on this morning. But yeah, there is a lot of truth in what John was saying there about people wanting to be able to have a visit to actually talk through particular legal matters or family law and aspects of that. And so the solutions that people are looking at need to encompass that capability where you may not have an internet connection at that particular point. So being able to have those documents offline, work on them, and then when you finish that meeting to synchronize those back to the main database, but retain all of that security around those documents. So yeah, NetDocuments gives that capability. And equally, if you're remote working, if you happen to be lucky enough to get on an aeroplane these days and you need to be working on there, having the documents to hand and being able to work on those and syncing them back up when you land, and making sure that you're productive even in times when you don't have an internet access point. That the other thing that was alluded to there as well was just around the risk is typically around people making mistakes where documents, and heaven forbid, somebody leaving a laptop on a train or anything like that, which obviously never happens. But those kind of things, what we're trying to do at NetDocuments is look at that from a preventative perspective. So we have capability called data loss prevention, which allows you to lock down certain documents so that only specific individuals in the firm can see those documents. And that provides a sort of preventative level of security around the documents, making sure that that a document can't be emailed accidentally, or somebody can't pass it to somebody else accidentally, or even view it accidentally. You have to have the permissions, and that's quite relevant around certain types of matters that firms get involved in, particularly in the financial services sector, where there's inherent security demand around those kind of things. So yeah, the security piece is definitely more and more prominent, and has been as people remote work, and the demands on the security modeling around data management system, document management systems becomes much more prevalent, and a demand from the clients, and therefore suppliers need to step up to that.
Yeah, just on the levels of access point, Karen, I don't know if you guys look at having different accessibility based off of practice area or what tech that staff use at your firm. Is that something that you guys look at?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've got the ability to have very strict control over roles and what those permissions of those roles will allow, depending on your particular area of the business. And also, if there are particularly sensitive matters, you can restrict access to only a few key people. So the system really helps us with that.
Yeah, and just risk in general. I know we've talked about some of the learnings we found over the last few months. Has the pandemic specifically changed the way you guys approach risk management, John, for your firm?
No, I don't think it has, Kayli. I think simply because we were, as soon as you say, I think we were pretty good at it. So, my phone's going to go off. But certainly our approach has been remains the same, and I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. We've got cyber essentials and advanced cyber essentials in terms of our what we try and do to keep ourselves secure, but we're audited by Lexel every year, and that's yet another test, if you like, of what we do. Just like I'm sure all the firms listening today, we do penetration testing to make sure our perimeter is there. So when you start bundling all those things together, and whether you need to demonstrate that to an auditor or to a new client, because more and more now we're getting clients, particularly companies, coming on board and saying, yes, we might want to do business with you, but can you answer this 42-page questionnaire? And a lot of that is about data security. Now, as soon as we start saying things like, we've got advanced cyber essentials, and we get a Lexel audit every single year, a lot of those questions actually fade away. So our approach remains the same, but that was probably because we had a fairly good remote working offering. Although, did you want to pick up on one of the things that Guy was saying in terms of remote working? Ellisons has got 7 locations, around Suffolk and Essex, and therefore we do have people living in the back of beyond, and some of those people don't have a very good broadband access. So sometimes working from home isn't good for them. But at least with NetDocuments, they can actually download those documents to their device, go home, work on them, and then in some cases drive 800 yards up the road, get a Wi-Fi signal or a mobile signal, and then upload the document. So, you know, we make an assumption, don't we, that connectivity is there all the time. Not quite yet in the UK.
Absolutely. We'll move on to the next segment then, just a little bit more around people and change management in general. How do you bring people along with you around these journeys? Obviously, Karen, you guys have gone through a huge tech overhaul before the pandemic, but what was that like in order to actually practically get that going within the firm? How do you engage with your staff?
Yeah, I think it's all about, you know, communication, you know, and collaboration and input from the people who actually use the systems, you know, day in, day out. And I think at the time our people were screaming out for a change, because we were struggling with what we had, you know, the infrastructure that we had, the systems we were using. You know, there was a lot of downtime, there's a lot of frustration. So when we came up with a solution that we could put to people to say that, you know, this is what we think would be great going forward, you know, we got people on board, we got them engaged, we you know, creating almost like a task force of key people within each department, because again, you've got to be able to adapt and you know, focus certain things depending on the area and the practice needs, because, you know, it's great to have a consistent approach, but not one size does fit all, you know. And I think bringing people along with you, trying to just understand the bigger picture of why change is needed, and, you know, it's not to be feared, it can be a positive thing. And I think particularly over the last 12 months, we've shown that we've gone through a huge change, you know, that nobody would have anticipated that. And I think everyone's come through it so positively and so well. It just shows that we can do it, you know, not being afraid of what else is out there and alternatives, and sort of, you know, bucking the trend. But, you know, I think transparency, you know, we're very open in terms of what we share with our people, you know, numbers, figures, what we're trying to achieve as a business, our objectives, our goals, what their role is in that, how they can impact the business, and how they, you know, can impact the client service. And it's just about, and of course now we've made the shift to employee ownership. That is a huge empowerment to bring people along even more, because they've got a more vested interest in the success of the business, and they have more of a voice. We've always empowered people to have a voice, because, you know, we don't know it all, you know, and, you know, we don't use the systems as much as they do on a day-to-day basis. So I think engaging and bringing those people along that do have those insights and views and opinions, you know, is really, really important to get that buy-in.
Yeah. And what about at Ellisons, John, your firm is slightly bigger than Karen's, but also you guys go through a few mergers over the last 2 years. What has that communication look like, and how do you know, bring people with you on that journey?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, if I stereotype law firms, they're not ones that would be champions of change. So it's always something that a minefield that we've always had to navigate. I you know, building on what Karen says, engagement and communication has to be key, and actually trying, you know, listening to the departments and having champions within the departments when we are making change. It is the key, listening to that feedback and try and at least have a feedback loop to say, yes, look, you know, we heard what you were saying, but actually we can't do that. Sometimes that's, you know, at least people feel listened to. But I think one of the biggest changes we've seen in this pandemic is people are more accepting of change. So the implementation of the document management system that we did during the pandemic, whilst looking from the outside, people might think that was nuts to do that. I think we were, you know, as a firm, the people were accepting of that change, because they saw that it was the last piece in the jigsaw. And what that meant was that you can work from home. You can see your client files on your device now, so you don't have to go into the office to pick up the physical file to work on it. And of course, the other benefit of that is the collaboration, that, you know, if I've got the physical file at home and Joe wants to work on it in Ipswich, he can't, because I've got it at home. Now we've got one version of the truth, and we can all see that. And I think the firm has seen the tangible benefits of that. And, you know, we will push on in terms of those tangible benefits, because we will reduce our filing space, and we are now planning to reduce our office space in Colchester. So we'll be saying goodbye to a couple of buildings, and that's because of two reasons. Number one, you know, we're going to hybrid working, so we don't need all that office space. And number two, some of that space that was taken up by filing, we are going to see that reduce over the coming months and years.
Yeah. And Guy, how does bringing along people on the journey in change management look for you guys? Obviously, you come into law firms in this space when they're, you know, trying to figure that out for themselves. What are your lessons in that area?
Yeah, so we have, or as an organisation, we have the benefit of seeing many implementations, and so you can sort of oversight those and see where the success is gained and where is the most success gained. And I think it really boils down to an area that Karen touched on, which is you have to show the wider audience what the benefits are of the implementation of a new solution. So understanding, you know, how they're going to derive benefit from it, and getting the buy-in from the community of people that are going to be using it. So, you know, I tend to refer that as the carrot approach rather than the stick approach, where you're trying to force it in there, but actually get their buy-in to the benefits that they're going to derive from the system. And then the other part of it is awareness, and just making sure that everybody is up to date and up to speed with where that program of events or activities or the deployment model, how is that progressing, and set realistic expectations. If anything, set expectations that you can better. So if you have a timeline to do something, add a little bit of a buffer into that timeline so that you're delivering ahead of that time frame, and then people gain confidence in it, so that when the actual deployment goes all the way through, you actually have people bought into it. And also monitoring it to look at where there may be some stragglers, where maybe they've missed a training session, they've been on holiday or whatever, and have missed a particular component of it, and just pick up on that. So we look at activity reports through the system to understand who's using the system, you know, what sort of levels of use are they getting out of it, how many documents are they managing through the system, and that starts to list out. You can identify people that aren't using it as much as perhaps they could be, and then one-on-one opportunities for a little bit of training or a bit of nurturing or a bit of hand-holding, whatever that is. But, you know, really tight monitoring of the whole project is the key to success in my view. And certainly looking at the implementations that we do, the really good ones are the ones where there's that openness across the firm, good timelines to do things in, and they've started off by identifying what the benefits are to the individuals that are going to be using it. So there's definitely a carrot approach to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that intersection of culture and tech is something that's always been really interesting for me. And though firms may not realize it, the culture does kind of change over time, especially as people learn new abilities and job roles change. I'm wondering, how do you capture what culture looks like at your firm, and how do you audit? Is that something you regularly look back on, especially over the last year with all of this change that's been happening? Do you look back at your culture and think, oh, maybe we need to package ourselves a different way or communicate in a different way? Karen, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're very much cultural led, or we try to be, and we always look at learnings from previous years and going forward. And I think a lot of that is around our people. You know, the way to shape your culture is to understand who you are as a business, you know, what your core purpose is and what your core values, and make sure that you've got the right people in your business that will help drive those values in everything that you do, to achieve your ultimate aims that you want to as a business in, you know, over the next few years. And of course the tech feeds into that as well, but also it's also then understanding, okay, what does the future of this firm look like in terms of succession? You know, who are the next generation of people coming in? What is the world doing out there that we need to start adapting to? Can we stay ahead of the curve so that we're not reacting? How can we be proactive, and just encouraging that within our teams and people as well, bringing people on board that can be innovation focused, that don't fear change, that see it as a positive thing. We're always wanting to improve. It's that old adage of, we've always done it this way. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. And actually there's so much more benefit out there of just having a more open mind. And, we try and, as I said, we embed our core values within our culture and employ around that. We look at everything that we do, client service, our technology, our communications, everything is embedded around that, so that we're creating an environment that everybody knows, they feel comfortable with, they buy into, and then everyone's going in the same direction. And then ultimately you can be successful if you've got everybody focused on the same end goal.
Yeah. What does that look like for you, John, in terms of the interest capturing culture as it changes?
Well, one of the things I guess we pride ourselves in at Ellisons is that we do have a great culture. But about 18 months ago, we wanted to try and capture, well, what does that culture look like? What does it feel like? And we really struggle with that, because we could tell you what it didn't. When you saw it going wrong, you could say, well, there you go, that's not the Ellison. We call it the Ellisons way. So at the end of the day, we put kind of 5 bullet points together to explain what our culture is. And it is about being fair to people, having talented individuals, working hard, playing hard, all that kind of thing. But the way we try and maintain it, it is quite interesting, because whenever we do a project, or I'll give you an example of the new working from home policy, we didn't ever want to be in a position where somebody says, well, you've just damaged the culture, or you've just poisoned the culture. So we have 2 groups that we refer this type of thing to. So we have a management board. It doesn't really matter who they are, but let's say they come up with the ideas about this is going to be our working from home policy, and then we run it through the partnership, which is approximately 30 people, all partners of the firm. Some of them engage on this type of thing and some of them doesn't, but at least you've actually engaged with them and asked their opinion. And then we have another group of people called the influence group, and they're just people in the firm who want to have a voice, and we asked the influence group to get together virtually to discuss the working from home policy draft. And from the partnership and the influence group, we were able to come up with a blended policy that we hoped hits most of the people most of the time. Of course, there were, if I say outliers in both groups, who wanted kind of subtly different things, but what we're trying to do is hit as many people as possible, and that's how we try and maintain the culture. It's a constant management, if you like. It's one of these things where I don't believe you ever arrive. It's you have to just keep trying all the time. But that's how we go about it, and it is fundamental to the firm in terms of we like to support the local communities, we like to support local businesses. We're passionate about our people, we're passionate about our clients, and we're passionate about our culture, and those kind of things I think it binds us all together, and that's why people sometimes want to come and work at Ellisons.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in our last 10 minutes now, so I'll remind the audience that we're going to get into the Q&A. So if you have any questions, do pop them in the Q&A or the chat section, and I'll get to them. While people are thinking of questions, we have a couple up on screen. Guy, I just wanted your thoughts around that culture change piece and kind of how that's evolving, really.
Yeah, I think the next period of evolution of law firms is going to be very interesting, because I think the pandemic has brought about change that was a little bit unexpected and accelerated change in some areas, where now I think people are looking and can achieve a much better work-life balance. And so new people coming into law firms or looking to change their roles, or between law firms perhaps, are probably going to be a bit more demanding of the law firms in terms of what culture do you offer, how much flexibility do you offer. Can I work from home 2 days a week and in the office 3 days a week, or can I work permanently in the office because I don't have an environment at home that I can work in? So it's that level of flexibility that I think has been introduced very rapidly that firms need to adjust to. And by adjusting to that, if you can create a working environment that the new generation of lawyers coming through, or the existing lawyers, can see adaptability in that, then you'll encourage the better lawyers to join your firm. because the better lawyers will have more capability to make those demands and a bit more flexibility to ask around and find out which law firm they would prefer to work for. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on law firms to just change their working styles and the culture in the firm to accommodate that change that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're seeing much of that, Karen or John, in terms of your areas.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I mean, I would say yes, definitely, and we survey our people quite regularly every quarter, just in terms of, you know, what are they feeling about their working life, you know, particularly over the last year, you know, what do they want to see coming out of this, and how can we look at changing, how can we look at adapting, you know, how do we make this an optimum working environment for you? Because ultimately, if they are working in an environment that they flourish, they're going to perform better, the clients are going to get a better service. So we're constantly having those conversations with our team, and that helps to shape our recruitment offering, you know, as well. And we've got that flexibility and agility of being able to work anywhere, you know, on any device. And I think we've got people down in Dorset, we've got people in Bournemouth, Devon, you know, we're able to have a bigger reach now, and that opens up the talent pool for us as well. And, you know, having that work-life balance is really important. And we've had some great feedback from clients recently where they've said, actually, it was great to be able to speak to a lawyer outside of 9 to 5 working hours, because for them, they're working as well. And that was one of the reviews and the feedback that we got, was it was fantastic that they were adaptable around me, because rather than them being around us, you know. And I think if you've got those processes and systems in place to help with that, I mean, I think going forward, that's going to become something that will need to be looked at quite seriously. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a question from Maggie for both John and Karen. John, they ask, how is your organization's experience with Mitel soft phone, or have you deployed Mitel desk phones to those that work from home? How has Mitel integration with NetDocuments?
So in terms of Mitel, we implemented Mitel probably about 2 years ago, and our first experience with Mitel wasn't very good, because we were sitting on their multi-tenanted cloud platform, and that gave us quality issues. So we've fairly recently moved to another vendor who gives us a private cloud solution, which has changed the quality in a very, very positive way. We've removed all phones from people's desks, so everybody now works on soft phones, much like this. And you know, one of the benefits to the firm of doing that is we've got quite a bit of money back in terms of not having those very expensive clocks sitting on people's desks that they seldom use. So it's worked out very well for us, but with a bit of a hiccup at the start, I have to say. Didn't go down very well.
Learning progress.
Yeah.
Karen, Maggie asks which PMS you use.
It's called Action Step.
Great. If you have any more questions, we have 5 more minutes. So I have a question for y'all. John, you mentioned at the beginning, sorry, you could have a drink of your water. You mentioned that you're looking at AI and different automation solutions for a range of different things. And I'm just wondering, has that been influenced at all from the pandemic, or was that a natural progression of things that you guys were looking at implementing?
No, it was part of our overall strategy. So we had a if you like a digital transformation plan. One of the steps in that plan was the document management system, and that was the last bit in terms of our overall remote working. The next phase of Ellison's plan is innovation, and innovation is a very cool word, isn't it? But our way of looking at innovation is efficiencies for the business, and that's why we've turned our attention to AI. We're as I said, we're running a couple of these proof of concepts. This is whereby it's taking the mundane search work from, if you like, some of our corporate property lawyers, and producing something that might take a couple of days in 3 hours. Now that's the early feedback we've seen. If that holds true in terms of, you know, where we go with this, you know, the return on investment would be within the first, you know, 2 or 3 months. So that's the first tool, and then we've got another tool that we're looking at for our corporate and commercial team around contracts and the review of contracts, the AI review of a contract. And we'll wait and see how that goes. But you know, we do have this broad plan, and you know, I think it's fairly comprehensive. As I've already said, IT security or cyber security runs in parallel to that plan, so that's always a major concern about what we're doing. And we've got some things that we're thinking about investing in, some additional tools, which just happen to be, again, AI, but on a security point of view, in this coming year.
Yeah. I always find AI and automation an interesting thing to ask legal sector, because it was overhyped a few years ago, and we yeah, it was all you heard about in the media, it seems. Yep. But we also asked that question in our legal IT landscapes research, and one of the questions we asked was the gap between where automation currently is in the firm versus where firms would like to be. Karen, what's your automation gap look like? Are you guys looking at automation at all?
Yeah, we do. With our practice management system action step that we use, there is a lot of automation already built in. So as part of the workflow system it has, its strength and its core is its workflow automation system. So you know, in terms of risk management and compliance, there's lots of things that you can generate automatically, you know, reminders and tasks and key dates and prompts and supervision. There's lots of things, and it's all visible, it's all transparent there. It's just, you know, a perfect way to be able to view a file instantly and see exactly where it is. And a lot of that's based on its core automation sort of system that sits at the heart of ActionStat, which is one of the reasons why we took it on, because it helps us to build some really good robust processes and workflows around that, which we can obviously bespoke to different areas of the law that we work in, so that we can really adapt and focus on the different risk profiles and things like that. So but very much that was a key driver in why we chose the system that we did, because there was that automation ability already there, and it's easily built on and changing. Because it's web-based, it can just be updated very quickly, and we don't have to have downtime or overnight updates and things like that. It can just be, you know, amended, updated, and it's there. But it's also very customizable, so we don't have to spend lots of money on development teams and lots of people developing the system for us. We can do it ourselves because it's very intuitive, it's quite easy, it's very simple to use, but it's really clever in how it sort of how it delivers its automation. So it will always get better, because we feed back and we get ideas from our people as to how they would like to see it improve. So we're always feeding back constantly to ActionStep, and they're always taking on board clients' thoughts and ideas. So it's constantly developing, and that will only improve. But it's at the moment, it's a very good system of automation already.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Great. I think in our last minute, I'll hand it over to Guy. There's a lot that we covered in this session, and obviously we could keep talking about, you know, different change, and obviously this all feeds into productivity and the new normal as people are trying to figure out what that looks like. What are your takeaways from today's event?
Yeah, well, there are quite a few actually. There's obviously a lot that we've covered there, and some of the points that Karen's just making about ActionStep, who are one of NetDocuments' key partners, and we have a lot of joint clients in their native country of New Zealand and Australia, and more recently in the UK as they've started to expand heavily over here. And it's that point that Karen made about workflow and being able to pick up on the practice management components and roll those through to document management to ensure that you get that smoothness of that integration. But probably the one thing that I've seen the most of in terms of acceleration during the last 12 months, is really the demand for collaborative working. And by that, what I mean is integration with other tools, you know, like being able to integrate smoothly with Teams and having the ability to store information from a chat within Teams against a document, or to annotate a document, but to try and pull those components together to give a much more single truth around an individual document. So, that remote working has kind of stretched that demand on the suppliers like NetDocuments. And that's the area that we probably threw the most development work at during the last 12 months. And in the very early days of the pandemic, was really making sure that we accelerated the capabilities of the product around collaboration tools to ensure that people could work remotely very, very efficiently. So I would say that's the area that I've seen the biggest change in, is that remote working, and now coming out of that balance and hybrid working environments and needing to accommodate that by the solutions that we deliver. So yeah, those would be the key points, Kayli.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Guy. And thank you to John and Karen for joining us today. So a lot to take back, I think, and a lot that we could have continued on easily. So and thank you for NetDocuments again for making this happen with us. And
thank you, Kayli.
we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.